Andals. The Andals are a race of men who invaded Westeros 6,000 years prior to the events of the series. In the present day, they are the dominant ethnic and cultural group on the continent. The Andals are one of the three major ethnic groups from which the humans of Westeros descend, the others being the First Men and the Rhoynar. The Andal invasion caused the fall of many of the kingdoms of the First Men which had developed in the wake of the Pact with the Children of the Forest. The Andals also brought the faith of the Seven to the Seven Kingdoms. The Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, the King on the Iron Throne, claims to be the King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. The Dothraki refer to Westeros as Rish Andali, the land of the Andals. Ser Jorah Mormont, a Northman, is called the Andal in Essos, even though the Andal influence is less in the north of Westeros. History. The original homeland of the Andals was a region on the west coast of Essos called Andalos, located north of the modern free city of Pentos. 6,000 years ago, after allegedly receiving visions from the seven-faced god, the Andals were spurred on by their new faith to migrate to Westeros, where they overran and conquered most of the continent, which was then inhabited by the First Men. The Andals brought the concept of chivalry and the manufacture of iron-wrought weapons and armor with them from Essos. In many cases, the Andals intermarried with the populations of First Men that they conquered. Still, the overwhelming influence on the gene pool of the continent is from the Andals, to the point that the Seven Kingdoms are often called the land of the Andals by peoples in Essos, such as the Dothraki. The exceptions are the north, which the Andals never conquered and where the blood of the First Men is still strong, and Dorne, where the Andal inhabitants later intermingled with the refugees from the east. The Andals did conquer the Iron Islands as they did the rest of southern Westeros, but these Andal families acculturated to the unique Ironborn society on the islands, even going so far as to convert to the local religion of the drowned god. Thus, while some Andal bloodlines were introduced to the Iron Islands, the cultural impact of their invasion was relatively minor. Andals and Essos. The Andals were a tall and fair-haired people said to have originated in the Axe of northern Essos, although some say they came from south of the Silver Sea. They migrated and established Andalos in northwestern Essos, stretching south as far as the Flatlands and the Velvet Hills and engaging in conflict with the tribes that inhabited those lands, such as the so-called Hairy Men. Legend tells that they were visited by the incarnations of the Seven, who crowned their first king, Huger of the Hill. They learned the art of working iron from the Rhoynar, who lived along the Rhoyne. It is unknown when the Andals sailed west across the narrow sea from Andalos to Westeros. Some sources date the Andal invasion to 6,000 years ago. According to the true history, it occurred 4,000 years ago, and some maesters claim it was only 2,000 years ago. Maesters generally believe that the Andals fled because of the expanding Valyrian freehold. The Valyrians established Muir in place of a walled Andal town, and many of the Valyrian colonists of Pentos intermarried with local Andals. Archmaester Perez Tan suggests that Norbos was originally founded by Andals. Before the scouring of Lorith by Valyrian dragon lords, the Loriti Isles were ruled by Carlin the Great, who desired to be king of all Andals. Andals in Westeros. Andals first landed in the Fingers and attacked the First Men living in the Vale. They burned out the weirwood groves, hacked down the faces, and slaughtered the children of the forest that they came across. Everywhere they proclaimed the triumph of the Seven over the old gods. A hill, now known to the Westerosi as High Heart, was sacred to the children of the forest. There, the Andal king Erig the Kinslayer cut down the children's grove of 31 weirwoods. It is said that the First Men killed half of the children of the forest with bronze blades, and the Andals finished the job with iron. After several hundred years of war, the Andals conquered or married into the southern kingdoms of the First Men and created their own. Only the kings of winter resisted the Andals successfully, stopping them at Moat Cailin. According to legend, at some point in time at the Night Fort, the Rat Cook served an Andal king, possibly Tywell II Lannister or Oswell Arryn, a pie made of bacon and, unknown to the king's son. Culture. Most of the current population of Westeros is, predominantly, of Andal descent. Their culture, language, and religion have permeated most of the continent. Knighthood is a distinctly Andal institution, closely tied to the faith of the Seven, and introduced by the Andals to Westeros. What is known in the present day as the common tongue of Westeros is actually the language of the Andals, which displaced the old tongue spoken by the First Men. Even the independent First Men living in the north eventually took up the language of their southern Andal neighbors. Andal culture is marked by the strong influences it has had on the culture of the Seven Kingdoms. The Andals brought the faith of the Seven to Westeros and with it the warrior tradition of the knight. The Andals used iron, while the First Men used bronze. The Andals also brought a superior writing system that supplanted the First Men's runes. Almost all of the early history of Westeros was written after the Andal invasions, causing it to have an Andal perspective. Ancient Andal warriors painted and carved 7-pointed stars on their flesh. They also carved stars into the stones of the fingers when they first arrived in Westeros, although this practice declined as they expanded beyond the Vale. Despite their victory, the Andals were outnumbered by the native first men of Westeros. The early Andal kings often tolerated worship of the old gods in Godswoods to prevent religious turmoil, although the faith of the Seven came to dominate southern Westeros over time. According to George R.R. Martin, hardly any Westerosi are pure Andal or first man after thousands of years of interbreeding. In the books. In A Song of Ice and Fire novels, the homeland of the Andals was a region known as Andalos, located north of the modern free city of Pentos. The Andals received a vision of a god manifesting to them as 7 robed figures, and were bade to leave their homeland and conquer Westeros, which they did in the Seven's name. While following their code of chivalry and honor, the early Andals were ruthless in conquering and destroying those who opposed the faith of the Seven and the justness of their cause. The Andals' blood remains purest in the Vale of Arryn, where their ships first landed and commenced the invasion of the continent. The Andals' spoken language and written alphabet have supplanted the rune-based Old Tongue of the First Men, even in the north. According to distant legends, the Andals actually originated in the Axe, a peninsula along the Shivering Sea northeast of Norvos, or at least, that is as far back as their origins can be traced, since human groups migrated across Essos for untold eons before recorded history. They later migrated from the Axe to conquer Andalos from a race of hairy men who were cousins to the Ibbenese, Inuit-like people who are fairly hairy. Andalos was located on the opposite side of the future location of Norvos, about the same distance southwest of Norvos as the Axe is again to the northeast. Whether the region of Andalos was subsequently named after them or if they renamed themselves Andals after their new home is unclear. They did live in Andalos for many generations, possibly longer than they had lived at the Axe, during which time their culture developed all of its formative features, to the time that Huger of the Hill, according to legend and religious belief, was visited by the Seven. Author George R.R. Martin has stated that the series was loosely inspired by the War of the Roses, which occurred in Britain during the 15th century. The first men loosely parallel the original Celtic inhabitants of Britain, while the Andals who later invaded and conquered Westeros are loosely parallel to the Anglo-Saxon invasions of Britain during the 5th and 6th centuries. Their name is also similar to the Vandals, barbarian tribes who were conquering parts of the Roman Empire at the same time as the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons divided up Britain into 7 kingdoms, such as Mercia and Wessex, known as the Anglo-Saxon Heptarchy. Similarly, the small kingdoms the Andals established in Westeros eventually aggregated over the centuries into the 7 kingdoms such as the Westerlands, the Reach, etc. When the Anglo-Saxons invaded Britain, there was some intermingling with the local Celtic population, but the overwhelming ethnic composition centuries later stemmed from the Anglo-Saxons. Similarly, the Andals intermingled with first men they conquered. Typically, the nobility tend to be predominantly from the invaders, Anglo-Saxon or Andal, while commoners descend largely from the conquered, first men or Celts. This varies considerably from one kingdom to the next, i.e. the inhabitants of the Vale are of very pure Andal descent compared to other regions. According to the TV series official pronunciation guide developed for the cast and crew, Andals is pronounced Andals, the emphasis is on the first syllable and the second A clearly enunciated. This pronunciation is usually followed, but occasionally the second syllable has been slurred so that the word is pronounced Andles, handles, without the H.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.